Hey everyone, it's been a hot minute, but
Hello.
as we promised 2 weeks ago, which last week, I'm going to be completely honest, this week's video is kicking my entire ass. Like, not just part of it, the whole thing. I ended up getting so caught up in my, research last week that I totally forgot that I was even supposed to plan a live stream. Like, I basically woke up, rolled out of bed, dove headfirst into a pile of books, and didn't come back out until about 10 o'clock at night. So this week's video, for the record, we'll announce what it is at the end of the stream, but I'm really, really excited about it, and it's one that I really need to do in part because a lot of other topics that I want to cover for the sort of 201 phase of the channel that we're starting to get into are dependent on it. So I'm really excited to announce that for what's coming out on Thursday. But yeah, I dove headfirst into it. Oh, Akeda, thank you so much for the incredibly generous $20 super chat. Holy crap. First official super chat of the new Xenia Bridge. Thank you. So for those of you who didn't see the live stream 2 weeks ago, Mero came on for a special surprise to announce that she will officially be taking over the co-host seat to bring back the Xenia Bridge. But there are going to be a few changes in kind of the format of the show. For one thing, there's a major return to focusing on allyship and focusing on sort of working together to make a better world. But also, there's going to be a bigger focus on science and science communication because both Mero and I have STEM backgrounds. So it's something that we both can cover with a great deal of zeal. And how better to start that than by covering the movie that nobody could stop talking about within the past few months, Don't Look Up.
Yeah.
So,
also,
Mero, do you want to talk a little bit? Oh, go on.
I was going to say, and also how appropriate that the tech gremlins have decided to join this time, because even though we're both science communicators, it doesn't mean that we're able to technify things. So,
yeah, Mero was fighting with her camera. Like, we could not get it to work.
Sorry about that, guys. I'll try and figure it out. It just kept dropping out, so yeah.
So we've got some bickering over the first super chat over in the live chat. So, Mero, do you want to talk about why this topic came up? Because this was kind of interesting. We were originally going to do a collab for Film Crusade and for your channel, because you were going to talk about one part that we were going to talk about today, and I was going to talk about another one. Let's talk a little bit about why that kind of didn't end up happening that way and why we decided to do this live instead, which sucks because we can't do clips and stuff because you can't mess with the clips so that YouTube doesn't decide to, screw off with it and shut down your stream. Which there's filters and stuff that you can put on if you're a covering some sort of media in order to show clips. But unfortunately, since it's a live stream, we're not going to be able to do that. Mero, let's talk a little bit about why we didn't end up doing that.
My actual camera is overheating a lot and very quickly. So if anybody knows how to cool down a camera without getting condensation happening, please contact me on Discord. If somebody could link my Discord invite and just send me a few messages, just because I'm getting about half an hour.
Well, if you're membered on the server, it's in the allied servers list.
Yes, that too. So I'm getting about half an hour's worth of work out of it before it goes, no, I want to overheat. So it takes me about 3 or 4 days to film a half an hour.
And since, what is a day off? Can you eat it?
Yeah, exactly.
So we happen to get lucky that my Monday happens to be your day off.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So yeah.
Coming back to Don't Look Up, both of us were kind of struck because I remember messaging you when I saw it for the first time, and you did the same when you saw it at a client's place, because you don't have Netflix, right? Like, you told me that?
No, I don't have Netflix. I refuse to give money to Bezos if I can avoid it. So I'm doing my bit.
Wait, did Amazon buy Netflix? Last I checked, they were competitors.
No, I'm pretty sure they're together.
I'm pretty sure Amazon has their own competing service. I don't know. Can somebody in the chat confirm that for us? Because I've never heard of Netflix being owned by Amazon. Did they buy them or something? That'd be really interesting if that were the case.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but anyway, so I was at a client's place and I was like, oh well, Jennifer Lawrence like there was an advertisement. So Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo da Vinci.
Chad is still is pretty sure that Netflix is not owned by Amazon.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, my bad. Anyway, yeah, so I was like, oh, like, you know, it's a pretty big lineup. You know, you've got Leonardo da Vinci, DiCaprio, sorry.
Well, I mean, he is an artist.
That is true. Jennifer Lawrence, Kate Blanchett, Jonah Hill, Tyler Perry, like got some massive names.
Yeah, there seems to be a dang near consensus in the chat that Netflix is Bezos free.
Okay, awesome. I don't feel so bad about that now. Okay.
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill, Meryl Streep, like massive.
Tyler Perry.
Like, yep.
Ariana Grande.
Yep.
Like there's some huge fucking names in there. But like what's interesting though to me is, you know, because lots of people have talked about the science in Don't Look Up. And that's not what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the science communication and the themes in it. Because like I've seen lots of astronomers, for example, go in on how, well, the whole process that they outline isn't accurate and that sort of thing. But what did hit home for both of us was sort of the plight of the characters that were left to somehow communicate this horrendous tragedy in a way that people would give a crap about. And that's where I think both of us kind of had this like eureka moment, because holy crap, if you've ever tried to communicate science to a hostile crowd, and both of us have, because I've done videos and such on, for example, essential oils being dangerous. I've also done, and I got a lot of pushback for that one. I've also done videos on like COVID and my experience with COVID, and, you know, like content creators and stuff that had put their own communities at risk with COVID with not having restrictions and such, which, you know, for those who don't know, I almost died from it. So I kind of I've got a dog in the ring, as it were. Yeah. But the big thing that was interesting about this video was that it came out. It was originally made to be about climate change, but when it came out, it felt so much more like it was about COVID in a lot of ways. Like it sort of almost oscillates between the two, even though COVID wasn't even really a thing when the script was written. Yeah.
So one of the things that you got to understand is that Leonardo da Vinci, DiCaprio.
Press F to pay respect for Mero's mind, chat.
Leonardo DiCaprio. If I say Da Vinci, you know who I'm talking about. He's a major climate change proponent. Would you call him that? Not a, but you know, he fights for the science communication. Mm-hmm. And so one thing Nevermore asked, is it a good film? I enjoyed it, but my 100% thing that I will say to anyone who's about to watch it for the first time, it's not subtle.
No,
it's like
it bashes you over the head with a support beam.
Yeah, it's sort of like, you know, I would say getting hit to the head by a brick would be more subtle than this.
Catch.
Really, really, really not subtle. I cannot overemphasize about how not subtle this movie is. But in a way, I kind of agree. I think it's a really good way that it's not subtle, like, because it's right now with climate change, it's basically you can't not be subtle anymore. You can't be, oh, please, can you please not do this? You can't do it anymore because scientists have been doing that. Oh, could you not do this for, you know, 100 and something years, 150 years, been warning about the effects of carbon dioxide build up in the atmosphere for over 150 years. And yes, I'm saying 150 years because Eunice Foote, look her up. She was the first person to find out that carbon dioxide traps infrared radiation. And she did that in 18 something or other. I can't remember, but yeah, she was the first person to realize the potential effects of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And even Arrhenius, Svent Arrhenius, who's famous for the Arrhenius equation, he was also saying the same thing. He's going, this is not good. We need to not do this. So scientists have been warning about climate change for literally hundreds of years. And
So I would like to give you guys a warning, by the way. If you haven't seen the film, we are going to be talking spoilers, but I'm not sure if spoilers are really going to reduce your experience of the film for the vast majority of
yeah,
people. Like, I knew a lot of the highlights going in because people were just endlessly talking about it on the Bird Hell site, and I
mm,
still thoroughly enjoyed the experience. If the word enjoy can be applied here, because really what happened is the experience thoroughly took me on an emotional ride from which I wasn't sure
mm,
if I fully consented to, and I'm not sure
yeah.
how I felt by the end, but it was still sort of cathartic in a way. And we'll talk a little
And
bit about why that was.
to be fair, at 2 minutes and 23 seconds, because I watched it and I put some timestamps. At 2 minutes and 23 seconds, they tell you the end of the movie.
Yeah,
They
they
actually
do.
like full on tell you at the what happens at the end, but you don't even have to guess. It's so incredibly, it's incredibly predictable, but not predictable of, oh, of course it was the butler that killed them. Like I saw that coming in 100 years away. It's predictable because you're like, this is what's happening. Like it is
And
predictable
what
in a really
hurts
good
is
sense,
Well,
if
and
that
what
makes
hurts
sense.
is that it's predictable because we literally saw some of the things that happened in the film happen over COVID specifically. And like we've seen similar things happen. For example, in Australia during the wildfires, there were people protesting the government attempting to put in restrictions around climate change related legislation. Like
Hmm.
it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
Ikeda with a $5 super chat. Maybe the climate change deniers and anti-vaxxers need to have the facts explained to them with a cactus.
well, to give you an idea, in Australia, the Labor government brought in the climate change, the carbon tax, which was wildly popular amongst the younger generation. And as soon as Labor got voted out, the Liberal Party, which is actually our Conservative Party, just overturned it and got rid of the carbon tax, even though industry people in industry were like, no, we need this. We need to know our price. Like, you need to give us a price so we can figure it out. But when they got rid of the carbon tax, like the carbon tax reduced emissions, and a lot of industry people really supported it, as well as a lot of the Australian public.
Imagine
So
living in a
yeah.
country like that where like the industry folks actually realize that maybe they shouldn't kill the planet too. Oh,
Mm.
Lord Elantry, we've got a super
Oh
chat that
wow.
just came in with them. I'm actually not sure what currency that is. And
Uh,
okay.
I think
This is
it's
late for me, so I'll watch the
Korean.
VOD, but I wanted to throw some money. Thank you for the loads of wonderful content. Thank you for being such a genuine content creator. Well, thank you so
Oh,
much,
that's
Lord
very
Elantry.
sweet.
Thank you for the gift. So
Thank you.
let's get into the movie itself because we've rambled for 15 minutes without actually starting to touch the movie. So one of the major driving plot points of the movie is there's three main characters, really. The movie seems like it's about Kate Dibiasky, which, we talked about. That's Jennifer Lawrence's character. But a lot of it also focuses on Dr. Randall Mindy. And what's interesting about him is he's the professor, even though Kate, the character, is the one who discovers the comet. He's the professor that sort of confirms it because he's actually tenured and all of that. So she's like his grad student. And what's interesting is right off the bat, a lot of conservatives got really freaking mad at this movie because one of the things you see is the punishment of female scientists and female sort of figureheads. And I'm using the term female here. I guess, woman scientist. It's just, female is just easier to say. I'm not saying, anything that's not a sex comment. It's just easier to say when you're talking about scientists. So apologies if anybody feels something about that. That's not like, I'm not using it as a sex characteristic. I'm just saying, like, women in general, women scientists just sounds awkward to my head, and I don't know why that is. But like, women in general, when they come forward with any sort of big deal or information, the way that they are punished about that. There is, for example, like her boyfriend after her interview comes out with basically claiming that she was crazy and makes money
Mm.
writing a book about how crazy she was. And
Yeah.
at the beginning of this, like, there's this TV interview
With
that happens early
Can I?
on.
Yeah, just giving a little bit of context is there was a TV interview. I think you were about to go into it. Sorry, Ali, for interrupting. But she basically like, they're getting this interview and the two people interviewing are laughing, going, oh, ha, ha, like, is it going to destroy my ex-wife? And they're like, no, this is actually going to destroy the planet. This giant comment is going to hit the planet. It's going to destroy the planet. And
well, we need to set that up a little bit, because the thing
yeah.
is, like, the Dr. Randall Mindy, that guy, he's so awkward at the beginning of this interview that they actually make comments, the co-hosts do, that he's going to need like media training in order to properly give this interview, because he's stammering, he's stumbling, he's anxious, and so he's barely speaking. She sort of takes charge and like puts forward that, hey, by the way, this comet is almost definitely, this meteorite is almost definitely going to hit the Earth. And like they're trying to crack jokes about it, and she stops them and she's like, you need to understand, you and everyone you know is going to die unless we do something about this. This is bigger than the comet that extincted the dinosaurs. And like, because she has this emotional outburst about it, she gets memed and mocked on the internet.
Yeah.
And this is a major plot point. She basically gets driven completely out of the public eye.
Yeah. Because how dare somebody be panicking over the destruction of the planet? Like, this thing's going to happen. We're all going to fucking die, and you're making light of this. And she has this meltdown. She like gets angry, and then everyone's like, oh, she's just, she's on a period. Guys,
anytime you accuse, like, newsflash, guys, I'm just gonna say, anytime you accuse anyone of being on their period, if they get emotional, that's sexist. Like, I shouldn't have to tell my audience that, because y'all are generally pretty decent. But like, if for some reason a focus got lost and is hanging out in the chat or something, just so you know, that's sexist. Like, just so you know.
Yeah, it's so
and there are memes about this. She gets mocked relentlessly, like so badly that she becomes basically non-functional. And what's hilarious, though, what's fucked up also, is that Dr. Randall Mindy, DiCaprio's character, gets, like, after she gets escorted out more or less, or storms off, starts bantering with them, and the two media hosts of this show basically make him their media correspondent because of the fact that he can make light of the situation, because even though he's not well spoken, he's willing to play their game. And that's the thing. You see this sort of escalate through the movie, where he ends up becoming the White House correspondent after it becomes politically auspicious for the lady president, who's supposed to be sort of a mimic of Sarah Palin, from what I sort of picked up. But the lady president, when it becomes auspicious for her to do so politically, she starts to care about the comet, and like she works with him to create this whole mission. And then at the last second, it gets derailed because a tech billionaire wants to mine like iron or other like precious minerals, silicon and other things from this comet. There's apparently a number of precious elements on it.
Rare earth metals, not silicon.
Yeah, rare earth metals specifically.
Yeah.
And so they think that there's a lot of these rare earth metals, and so they want to break this comet apart, and they want to use this really untested technology for it. And the thing is Dr. Mindy knows it's wrong. Dr. Mindy knows it's not going to work. But he is getting so rich and so powerful up the system that is privileging him because he's a white dude. And trust me, they make it pretty freaking clear in the movie that that's why. That he abandons even his wife. He cheats on his wife with a reporter who's basically only attracted to him because he's famous. And there's a scene that I'll let Marrow talk about that she pointed out that like we talked about quite at length, where it's made very clear that this reporter is so much more accomplished and so much better than him in pretty much every way. And yet she ends up sleeping with him because he's the one who's given the power.
Yeah. So she's like, she can speak like 5 languages. I can't remember exactly what it was, but she speaks like 5 languages. She has 2 PhDs. She's been married or had like close relationships with like 2 presidents. Like like her rap, her history, like if you did a fraction of what she could do, what she did in her life, you'd be incredibly proud to be this person. And yeah, and she and like Dr. Mindy's like, my dog died once and that was very sad. And and it just shows like she is like so much more. But a person with her her credentials was basically reduced to a morning TV host, and like she should have been so much more. But she's also a conniving bitch as well. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, just because she was really good at her life has been amazing. They also make a good point that she's a conniving bitch, and that kind of also upsets that stereotype of women are nice and can be trusted and loved, loving, and that's no. Kate Blanchett's character, and you don't even know it's Kate Blanchett. When I first saw it, I was like, by the time I finished watching the movie, I was, for the first time, I was like, where was Kate Blanchett in that? And then I was like, oh shit, that was Kate Blanchett. You cannot recognize her. But her character is, again, like, is a conniving bitch. Like, there's no two ways about it. So it kind of upsets that stereotype of women cannot be accomplished and they cannot be a horrible person. So yeah,
Meryl Streep also is playing a bitch too.
All in herself. She is playing a bitch, but she's playing like a Trump. Yeah, she's also a bitch, but she's a bitch in a different form. She's a bitch in a Trump kind of way of being a fucking idiot and only caring about her election chances and shit like that. But
what's dumb is that she's not actually stupid. That's what's interesting. She makes it clear that she kind of understands a couple of times, though. This is where we start to get into your sort of your point that you wanted to talk about in your video eventually. Which was their impatience with the scientists attempting to communicate these very complicated processes as to how they verified that this data was real. Which one of the first things in that initial White House meeting, which happens before they go to the press, by the way, and actually, if I remember right, wasn't Dr. Mindy fine, but like Kate gets thrown into prison for going to the press, like because she has that meltdown on live TV? They were all supposed.
I think
she gets kidnapped and taken and is forced to basically sign an NDA, or she'll get thrown into Gitmo. Is more or less what happened.
Yeah.
But Kate got basically punished, even though she's the one who made this discovery, for going to the press about it, because it would be politically bad for Kate Blanchett's character, for not Kate Blanchett, for Meryl Streep's character.
Yeah, basically she was forced to sign an NDO, and it was really funny because they named the comment after Kate's, the Kate Dibiasky. And right at the end, when you were talking about how Leonardo DiCaprio's character starts getting all of the
accolades,
credit,
praise.
Yeah. So it goes, "Hi, I'm Dr. Randall Mindy, the discoverer of the Dibiasky comet." So, it's that there is that obvious gaslighting as well and the erasure of Jennifer Lawrence's character, because when she gets sent to Gitmo, and when she's not allowed to talk to the media. There's an amazingly striking scene where she's working at basically Walmart, and there's 3 months left until the comet hits the planet, and she's working at Walmart. She should be out traveling or something because she knows she's got 3 months left to live, but no, she's spending her life just sending people through. I just thought that was
in that scene, what's interesting is that she gets recognized because she's a part of the meme, but it's these three teenagers that are like, "Oh, well, you're rad because you actually feel shit." And it's interesting how one of them ends up kind of using it as an in to get into a relationship with her.
Yeah, but there was but it wasn't a creepy way. It was kind of creepy, but it wasn't like I'm gonna try and come hang out with us because we believe you, because her own family tells her, don't bring up anything about the comet because we agree with them trying to mine the comet because of all of the jobs that it's going to make. And it's like, again, climate change. Oh, we're getting so many jobs are being made if we keep the course that we're on. And
but
it's
what was since we're back to that though, there was multiple sort of scientist protests that happen in the movie that are heavily implied, like we see them in sort of movie reels and such. And what's interesting is, again, we have Dr. Mindy who knows the truth of this. He was there when the comet was discovered. He reported it to the press. He was such a strong believer that he went on that interview in the first place. And yet the second that he is handed these sort of accolades, this gift, you see him turn where he mocks Kate along with everyone else in shows and interviews and such, where he promotes her fucking ex's horrible book about how crazy she was, where he makes tons of money. Literally, you see over and over, apologies for those of you who don't like these terms, but they're the most useful, cishet white men profiting off of all of the work of people who are not that.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's also an African American sort of head of, not NASA, it's the head of the Earth Defense Force or something, which is apparently a real thing. It is apparently a real branch of the government that was created. But this African American gentleman has found some of the similar readings. He believes them, and he at one point has to put his arms on his head, and he gets arrested by cops, and he's terrified that they're gonna shoot him.
Yeah.
And he gets laughed out of the White House too, even though he's actually a government official. He literally gets laughed out of the White House.
Yeah. There was something that you touched on with the there's a technology that's unproven, and Mindy knows it. And this is when he starts doing his redemption arc towards the end, because
except he doesn't actually get a redemption arc. Let's be completely fair. He doesn't really even get a redemption arc. He lets that go through, and he doesn't push back on it.
He does a little bit. He does because he
does. It's not meaningful pushback though. The second that somebody's money, he just lets them walk away because he's making so much money. It's pretty clear that he's not a good person by the end.
No, I'm talking about when he's talking to the Elon Musk stand-in.
Well, yeah, where he actually eviscerates him and says the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm talking about because because basically he turns around and he says to the guy, the Elon Musk / Jeff Bezos stand-in, he goes, any single person, any scientist that questions you gets fired. And I'm listening to a podcast called Megacorps, and it's about Amazon. And they've got a company policy of basically anyone who is questioning the way Amazon's being run gets fired. So I didn't know that until I was listening to this, and I was like, holy shit, because it's clear that the guy is a stand-in for those hugely wealthy people who have all the money in the world and a little bit of technology knowledge behind them.
Well, and he's somewhere between Bezos and Zuckerberg, because he's got a lot of and also Jobs. He's got some Jobs in there too, because he's got all the same outfits that he wears all the time. But this character is kind of an amalgamation of all of the big tech billionaires. And one of the things that he does is he pushes for this unproven technology that he claims has been proven in tests. He pushes for this unproven technology to break the meteor apart, but the calculations that were done clearly didn't add up, even if the meteor was broken apart, which is made pretty dang clear by the scientists as well. But any scientist that pushes back gets fired. And ultimately, the breaking apart of the meteor, the technology fails, because of course it does, because it wasn't given near enough time to be testing. And there's no possible... Sarcastic Tennyson says Zucker Bezos. So we'll just call him Zucker Bezos from now on. So Zucker Bezos, his technology is completely untested. It is completely like the data for the little bit of testing that has been published is very clearly fudged, and Mindy starts to point this out, but then Zucker Bezos more or less turns around and goes, you know, we have a profile on you. I looked yours up. You are a sad, selfish little man that the second that his comfort is even slightly threatened, will think that he's grandstanding, but will run straight back to comfort. And the thing is that's actually true.
It's true, but after that, as I said, his character has the beginning of a redemption arc, because he that's when he gets arrested, because he has a meltdown he has the same meltdown as Jennifer Lawrence's character does
Kate.
Kate has on the first interview, and he has.
But he gets hailed as a hero.
Well, he gets arrested.
Well, yeah, he gets kidnapped and threatened also, but like he also gets hailed as a hero online, where she got punished.
Yeah, and so he does actually have a redemption arc right towards the end, because that's when he's like, oh my god, we're all going to fucking die. And
but the problem is that it's not. I wouldn't call it a redemption arc though. Yeah, I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't even call it a redemption arc, though, because here's the problem. I think the reason for that was to prove that the only way that these types will change their tune is when it stops benefiting them. He didn't change until his wealth and his power got taken away from him.
Yeah.
And that was another thing that was really underscored by the film, was he was willing to go along with it despite being on the front frickin' lines of the discovery of this catastrophe, and he didn't stop until the power was taken away from him. And then all of a sudden he's a whistleblower. And you see this sort of thing all the time in real life with certain scientists, especially think about the tobacco industry, right? Like the tobacco industry created, I believe it was like the Center for Tobacco Studies or something. And they got this guy to claim that there was nothing conclusive for years and years and years and years. And finally, when the government inquiries came out, suddenly he flips and he tells on the tobacco industry, and he's hailed as a freaking hero despite being part of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm probably being a little bit more charitable to this character than you are, but you have a point there. But yeah, he
because he could have made a difference. That's the point of his turnaround. He could have made a difference. He had some of that power, but he didn't use it because he was too busy getting laid and making money and being famous.
Yeah.
So the fact that he didn't turn tail until he personally got insulted by Zucker Bezos, that doesn't make him a good person at the end. It shows that he didn't actually even get punishment for turning tail either. He got thrown into the back of a van and roughed up, but he didn't get the level of meaning and psychological punishment that Kate did. Kate is still being mocked all the way up until the end.
Yeah. It's very, you're right there. There's just another thing I want to talk a little bit is about how the media, because it's we're kind of on a not too much of a tangent, but there's a montage of before Kate gets completely, you're not allowed to talk to the media at all ever again. There's a montage of media appearances, and one of the comments that they had was that universe's version of Fox News. The person asking to Kate Dibiasky, they goes, "The comment has your name, so why should we trust you?"
Well, this isn't too bad of a tangent. Let's actually get into the real world parallels to that, because I immediately thought of your video on naming diseases when I heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is a good point. So if you don't know, I have a video on explaining why it's racist to call COVID-19 the Wuhan flu or the Kung flu, or
The
the
China
racist,
virus.
the China virus. Yeah, it's COVID-19, guys. It's COVID-19, and the virus is called SARS-CoV-2. And
By the way, if you guys haven't done so, go sub to Nervardia. Link is in the description to her channel. She's an amazing science communicator, and she will be coming back with new content for the first time in months fairly soon if we can get this camera situation sorted out.
Yep, hopefully. But yeah, so the question came up as like, the comment has your name, so why should we trust you? And the thing is, there's a lot of a lot of scientists have had things named after them, like discoveries named after them. And the question and she goes, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Like, just because the comment's named after me, I mean, I'm going to this comment's going to destroy the planet if we don't do anything about it, the kind of thing. Like, I'm talking out against my own discovery. why should I have that be a problem? And so there is, especially since COVID-19 came out, there's a lot of people who are saying things like, something has been connected to a discovery, and that a person is making money off this particular discovery. Why should we trust what this person is saying? So why,
even though she didn't make any money off of her discovery at all.
Well, she probably made quite a little bit from like media interviews and things like that.
Well, remember, it was made pretty clear that she wasn't getting paid for a lot of that stuff. This was her desperately trying to go out there. She didn't have an agent or anything. She was trying to be a whistleblower, and she didn't get paid for anything. He was the one who was making money, remember? That's why she had to go work at the store, because she like ended up having to make enough money to support her own apartment. So she didn't make anything off of this. Everybody around her did.
Yeah. Well, so what was happening? Yeah. So she was like, but what has that got to do with anything? Like, I'm just trying to tell everyone there's this giant thing about to hit the planet. And anyway, she, and that's one of the things that's happening. Like, a lot of people, especially with the vaccines, the COVID vaccines, and with climate scientists, there are some climate scientists out there probably making quite a bit of money. Like Greta Thunberg, for example, probably made quite a bit of money when she started.
Well, she's not actually a scientist.
No, she's not a scientist. She's just a kid that's trying to make everyone realize how bad climate change is. But people are going, well, they're making money, so there's this financial incentive for them to say this sort of thing, so we shouldn't trust these people. And the fact of the matter is, the people who are denying climate change, or the people who are the ones that are making a lot more money than the scientists that are doing climate change.
Hey, newsflash, as a STEM major, the vast majority of researchers who are doing actual research that actually benefits the public and not just making a bunch of money for corporations, they don't make that much money. There is not a lot of money in academia. There really isn't. There is far more money in being a so-called skeptic and pandering to the like beliefs and ridiculousness of climate change deniers and like tobacco deniers. There is way more money to be had from companies for lying than there is for telling the truth and doing the real research. For anybody who's ever doubted a scientist because they have, quote, a financial interest in whatever it is, like, if that scientist is working for especially a university doing a publicly funded study, that public funding might not even be enough to finish the study half the time. Like, publicly funded studies, it is incredibly competitive and very, very unlikely to actually land the funding that you need to see a study through.
Yeah. Like, just to give an example, was it the Dirty Dozen? I think they've named it, is the something like 65 or 75% of COVID and vaccine misinformation comes from 12 people, and every single one of them are millionaires. Every single one of them. If you like Robert Malone, like, a lot of people know who he is because he claimed that he invented the mRNA vaccines, but he didn't. He discovered a way to be able to introduce the mRNA into the cell. Everyone knows who Robert Malone is, but nobody really knows who Katalin Kariko is, who is the actual leader of the people who did the study, like who are doing the studies. Like, she was the one that pioneered mRNA research, and she's still in the mRNA research. Meanwhile, Robert Malone hasn't published anything in like 20 years. And so everyone's going to be like, oh, well, you know, Kathleen Carrico, she's been involved for so long, you know, she's got a financial reason to be saying these things. And it's like, well, don't you think Robert Malone also has a financial incentive to be saying these things as well?
So, oh no, everybody wants to silence him.
Oh yeah, as he goes on Fox News.
Well, and I mean, that's the thing, is there's a much stronger incentive generally for companies to protect the status quo than there ever will be for change to happen, generally. Like, it's always suspicious when you see companies backing legislation, because it usually means that something that would actually be effective would affect their bottom line a lot worse.
Yeah.
And you you see that going back to the movie, you see that in the movie, you see that play out with, Zucker Bezos, as it were. He probably has an actual name. I just don't remember what the hell it is. But you see that with Zucker Bezos, and you see that actually with the end of the world plan at the end, which again, this is major spoilers. This is actually major spoilers, but it's hilarious. And it also points out a point. So like at the end, the closest thing to a redemption that we get is that Mindy's character opts to not get on this shuttle that has only enough space for like 500 people. Half of the pods fail.
2,000.
Yeah, 2,000. So like something like a third or half of the pods fail. And the vast majority of the people that are in these pods are rich, old, white people. They're not of reproductive age, most of them. And this ship goes to another planet. And when they get there, there's this wildlife that is pretty clearly probably going to kill them, and one of the characters does get killed on screen by this wildlife. And it kind of harkens back to a joke that was made by Zucker Bezos earlier when it said, like, Madam President, how am I going to die? Well, you're going to be killed by a insert unintelligible world here. I don't know what that is. And at the end, it's like, oh, that's what it is. Showing that the algorithms, like, actually know more than Zucker Bezos and his team do. Yeah. Which is another really interesting. This comments on mass surveillance a lot too, and social media. There is so much social media commentary on here. Like, I've talked frequently about how we treat each other. What happens to Kate, the way she gets memed and mocked, people don't even stop to think about the faces on the memes they use. But if your face becomes a meme, it changes your life. And it talks about that extensively with what happens to Kate.
Yeah. And then you've also got the famous people like Ariana Grande. She plays a musician, and she's, initially you're like, oh my god, she's such a fucking bimbo, and she is a bit of a bimbo, but she's like, oh my god, guys, like, this comet thing is like really stressing me out. And she's got this pet project of save the manatees. So she's also really well written in the sense that on the surface she's a bimbo, she's two-dimensional, there's nothing special about her, but her very minor role
she does the concert where she encourages everybody to look up.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And like, it turns out that she's like actually quite a good person in regards to this, like, hey, let's listen to the scientists. But she doesn't like, oh my god, like, I'm so bummed out about this comet, I really want something to be done by it. And so it's easy to brush her off as a bimbo, but no, actually she's pretty on the ball. She just is made out to be a fucking ditz. So I like, when we say, like, it's really ham-fisted, but a lot of the characters are really well written, because the more you think about it, the more layers you have with the characters. And then, there's a lot of symbolism, like there's a lot of Native American symbolism that's littered throughout the whole movie. You've got a lot of, because when I watched it, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, holy shit, that's another thing that they mention. And then I'm like, a day or two later, holy shit, that's another thing that they mention. And
well, let's talk about, like, on another major sort of plot point. Let's talk a little bit about the Russia and China failures. Because you've got the big three countries that are the US, which is trying to break the comet apart. Russia, and I believe China's the other one.
I
But
think
there
so,
was
yeah.
but like, remember when the scientists proposed, hey, NASA should work with Russia? We've done that with the space missions, and the freaking like president lady was like, no, they're just going to use it to steal our military technology. So then, because the cooperation doesn't happen, the Russian contingency plan basically goes off like a nuclear bomb. Like, the bomb just goes off in Moscow by accident
Yeah.
that they're trying to set up.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was like the last chance that they had. And yeah, so there's a lot of geopolitical things because yeah, there was, because it's sort of one of the things I'm like, yeah, I think the, other countries, and like India and Australia and New Zealand, I don't think it was going to happen, because the thing is, with a comet, you can go in, look at it through a telescope.
All you have to do is look up.
Yeah, all you have to do is look up. But with climate change, you have to be able to do computer modeling. You have to be like that. And the thing is, like, a lot of people don't
Or just
have
live in a
that.
place that's affected by it, because, like, let's face
Yeah.
it, those of us who live in very far north climates, y'all, anybody, like my Washington peeps, if you got anybody who lives up north, tell me, was the winter that just passed the same as all the others? Because last I checked, like, let's talk about that 115-degree Fahrenheit week that we had here. Let's talk about how little snow cap is on Rainier right now. It is very obvious the effects of climate change if you live in an area that's affected by it.
By the way, 115 is shit.
Yeah, like,
115 Fahrenheit is 46 degrees Celsius. You
yeah,
had
we had
46
a
degrees
week.
Celsius and
We had a week where it was 115 degrees Fahrenheit. People died.
in
It
winter.
never gets that. No, in the summertime, in the beginning of summer last year. Marmar, I
Holy
actually got
shit.
my gecko Marmar. I got him about a week before that freaking heat wave hit. I had to protect him and keep him alive because he can die over 85 degrees Fahrenheit, like from heat stroke. We had to put him in our basement, have multiple fans, and I had to mist him constantly. Like, I missed 2 live streams because I had to keep that motherfucker alive. Like, this was deadly. And keep in mind, most houses here do not have AC. So if you want to talk about climate change, like, we can have a conversation up here in Washington because, like, our rivers are historically low right now because there's no snow cap. Like, it is very obviously here.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. Like, they were going, don't the reason why it's called "Don't Look Up" is because there was a campaign where they're like, if you look up, like, everyone just don't look up, because why would we want to look up? We're off in the fair off, and so asking people not to look up. At the point where at night you can see the fucking comet, like the comet's coming, and like to the naked eye, and so eventually when people do look up, it is very clear that there is the comet staring them right in the face. And then everyone's like, holy shit, you're wrong, you ruined, you were telling us it didn't exist, and now I've looked up and here's this fucking comet right in my face. And that's the thing, like, people don't believe climate change exists until it's face to face. And even then, some people here in the real world, in this climate change world, refuse to believe that climate change is a thing, because
Like, the really stupid, I think it was a Tucker Carlson, but I'm not sure. It might have been one of the other talking freaking heads. Chat, y'all will figure it out, I'm sure. There was somebody who was very special, we're gonna put it that way, who decided to state that everybody in Florida that's gonna have their properties flooded out should just sell their waterfront properties. So, like, to who? Fucking, like, Aquaman?
that was Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro. Yep, it was one of the talking heads. They're all basically just cishet white dudes, like, with the same fucking haircut.
Yeah. But yeah, it's sort of like climate change isn't a thing.
But it's like these rich people are literally losing their waterfront properties, and the response is, "We'll sell it to who? To who?"
Yeah, literally nobody. Yeah, it's and that's the thing. Like, people won't believe it's a real thing until right when it's too late, when climate change is hitting people. And it was just really one of the things like that happened is that during the movie you see montages of people going about their daily lives, babies,
Sarcastic
and then
Genesis says Benny Boyd says sell your land as a seaweed farm.
things like what was it? People like you're watching animals, these beautiful things like it, like of just everyday people living their lives, as well as so
And
quite a lot
yes,
of
by the way, Aether Tales
species
actually
of
caught my H Bomber guy reference. That
and
to who Aquaman was H Bomber guy's joke from his video on the topic, which I what do I have to say? Like, I have to freaking reference creators I admire.
yeah, he's good. He's pretty good. Yeah, and it was like they were just trying to remind us that this beautiful planet that we have is not ours. It's it's not just humans, it's everyone's. And it was just like with them interspersing these things, like one of the last things that of those quick montages is this little baby having a bath. And you're like, this baby is like only a few months old and it will never ever see anything because its only home has been destroyed because of fucking greed.
Mm-hmm.
And like the
Well, and this is one of the things that they really stress is the way that the media works together with the government, works together with the big tech companies, which sometimes own the media. Because if I remember right, Zucker Bezos also owned one of the news organizations. It shows how they work together to keep the people, as it were, like uninformed. Because basically, the interview that they went on at the beginning was basically the equivalent of like either Good Morning America or Fox and Friends. Like, that's the lady he was sleeping with too, was one of the two co-hosts of that interview.
yeah.
And like, when you look at that, you see them spreading the conspiracy theories and talking about the memes and not the comet, in the same way
Yeah.
that you see them spreading the conspiracy theories and talking about the anti-protest movements and not about climate change, because climate change is boring, because the comet is scary. That's not going to get clicks. People that are
Yeah.
so-called defying the man, America loves an underdog story, and that's what everybody was paying attention to.
Yeah. Hang on. I'm just trying to find because they went and talked. Here we go. They went and talked to the president, and they make a really good. They make a point where they say basically they say do you have any idea how often people come into our office and go on and tell us about how the world is about to die? Like, it's sort of everyone.
They say make it interesting. It's so boring.
Yeah, it's basically it's sort of like nothing. This is nothing new. Like, we get told all the time that the world's going to be destroyed. Like, why should we care? This is nothing new. And it's just like they basically just flip them off. Like, for example, there is with angles of Kate Dibliarski. She's kind of grunge looking. She's wearing like old, like secondhand.
She's all covered in
clothing.
tattoos.
Oh, is she? Oh, yeah, maybe she was. I can't remember. But she's kind of grunge looking. She's, got kind of, the hipster kind of hairstyle and big platform.
Don't they make her gussy up before the interview too, or at least they try to?
Yeah, they try to change the way she looks, and she's like, I'm not fucking wearing that. And then the next time you see her, she's wearing what they wanted her to.
Well, also
Anyway,
him, like her and Tyler Perry's character Jack Bremer, the guy who's like the head of the Earth Defense Force, they literally get tossed into a room and left there while Mindy's character gets to go into a debrief to talk about her discovery with the government.
yeah. But what there's a very interesting thing where you can tell that like she's not particularly dressed to go and see the president of the US, and the president's looking at her, and you can tell that the president's judging her in the way she's dressed, like and so she's just
She
discrediting
looks her up and down. She gives her the up down look.
Yeah. And there's also they were doing like the angles. They're looking at, if you're looking at the president, you can see her hands are old, like she's an older person, and she's making decisions about the future of the planet where she's not even going to see the end of the planet because she's too busy fucking off. And she end up and it's like she's basically telling the younger generations of it's fine. And
She also her vice, which if I remember right, either Secretary of the Interior or Vice President, one or the other, is her son. So like there's nepotism in there too, and he, like, you get to see how the media engineers with him the fake protests. Like they claim that they're a grassroots movement, and they have him shouting, don't look up, in this really powerful moment at the end where one of them does look up and goes, guys, actually look up, you can see it. But like you see these protests, don't look up, everybody's like shouting that right up until the end, kind of again like COVID, where everybody's like, oh, let's go to these rallies, until their son or daughter or best friend or husband or wife gets sent off to the hospital, or dad or mother, or like, insert vulnerable person. Everybody knows at least one. We're not that uncommon. Like, get sent off to the hospital because that person was unvaccinated and infected them.
Yeah.
From those rallies. Like, those rallies were super spreader events. And you see something very similar with the protest in this movie.
Yep. And there's also like scientists take the blame for political inaction. So, basically,
they blame the scientists. Oh, our scientists were wrong.
Yeah. So basically, what happens is that when the president, she accidentally sends a photo of her vagina to the wrong person, and again, this is a spoilers, heavy spoilers, but she accidentally, and so to go, oh look everyone, a comet, they to make everyone not care about the fact that she sent her a photo of her vagina to a person, then she goes and she says to the head of NASA,
it's a distraction campaign. It's a distraction
campaign. She says to the head of NASA, so how are you going to take the fall for this? And basically the head of NASA was like, yeah, okay, I'll take the fall for this. Like it was just,
and that's how Mindy gets appointed to be the, like, either the new head of NASA or at the very least the new correspondent in the White House on the comet situation.
Yeah. So so scientists are going to take
Kate calls them out for this, by the way. Like, Kate calls them out. And so by what you mean is that it's now politically advantageous and expedient for you to do so. And, like, the freaking president looks her up and down and she's like, yeah, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is while they're claiming that they're going to be taking action, they then, double back after, like, Zucker Bezos turns around and tells them to, break the comet apart, that they want the rare earth metals and all that. And then they start, like, engineering the scientists lied, don't look up campaign. So it shows how willing these people are to lie over and over and over again to get what they want. They only care about themselves.
Yeah. And so there are people, like, with climate change.
Oh, and Katie points out the head of NASA wasn't from a field related to space at all. Very Trumpian.
Yeah, that's true. That was true. She was like I can't remember. It was like naturopath or something. Like I don't even. Anyway.
Wait, what the? How?
I think she was a naturopath or something.
Or a chiropractor.
Or something like that. She wasn't. It wasn't definitely. Or it
wasn't astronomy.
Or something.
It wasn't astronomy's point.
Yeah.
Well, like, I need to react to Zoe's tweet here. My dad and I watched this together, and he somehow interpreted it as the comet being about how bad the COVID vaccine is, and that the president in the movie was Clinton. Freaking hell, though! Like, I just what? Please excuse me while I clean my brains up from the back wall.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. How can you miss that? Like I think the first time you meet the president, she's wearing a red suit.
Yeah, she is. And like again, the Don't Look Up campaigns, like it's very clearly a Trump rally.
Oh yeah.
Like very clearly, and again, they're very clearly lampooning Fox News the entire time. Like it's basically like the equivalent of Fox and Friends, you know, at the beginning, and like the equivalent of Tucker Carlson. Well, you're the comet's named after you, so how can we trust you?
Yeah. It's like, do you really think I want the thing to be that's going to destroy the planet like be named after me?
So do you want to kind of talk a little bit about the struggle of science communication itself? Because that was the thing that you really wanted to talk about in this. And we're kind of getting to the last half hour or so. The struggles of trying to make science communication entertaining and effective while still actually having the level of nuance to explain why these things are important without certainty. Because a lot of people want science to be treated as though it's a fact, like an indisputable fact. And that's not exactly how it works.
No. Well, one of the things that was basically what I saw straight off, it was so okay.
You want to talk about the interview itself, about like him trying to kind of explain the concepts behind how they figured out the comet was going to hit the Earth.
Oh yeah. Well, it's sort of they did a little bit of a montage where they figured out, okay, this is how many like sitting down and goes, all right, let's do this calculations of its thing of to all of his students. All right, let's figure out the calculations because I haven't done this before, and he gets really excited, and then it keeps hitting at zero, and it kind of.
I wasn't talking about that. I wasn't talking about that scene. I was talking about in the media interview and in the interview with the president, where he was trying to explain the nuances of science and the pushback that he got for getting into the details.
Yeah, because he was trying to go, and he was fumbling around. He was trying to explain to them, we've done the calculations, and and then he goes, and then Kate goes, this thing's going to hit the planet, like, and they're like, oh, what's the chances? And he go, and
Zoe says her son was chief of staff. That was what I was trying to remember.
Yeah. So so what's the chances of it happening? And he goes, oh, 99.78%. And he goes, oh, so let's call it 70%. It's 70%.
No, that's not what it is.
No. It's set 99.78. That's like 22.22% chance of it not happening.
Oh, so there is a chance that it won't happen, which is the reply.
So then it won't. Yeah.
So there is a chance that it won't happen. It's like it's infinitesimally small.
Yeah, and that's what we are seeing a lot with climate change, and then you've got those people who are like, so we do the mitigation efforts to stop climate change, and so the horrible things stop, and then they go, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. Why did we do all the mitigation efforts? And it was the same thing, because right at the beginning of the film, there's a photo of the ozone hole, like the hole in the ozone layer, and it's still there.
Didn't that actually start to heal itself because of all the mitigation?
It's starting to heal. Yeah, and because scientists went, there's a hole in the ozone layer. It's melting our ice caps. We need to do something about it. So the world got together and got rid of CFCs. And there are people who were like, scientists got all scared about this hole in the ozone layer, but it wasn't all that bad. So why did we do all that stuff? And it was like, because we did the stuff, it wasn't bad.
CFCs, for those of you who don't know, by the way, are chemicals that are primarily used as refrigerants. Basically old refrigerators that were decaying, that stuff got tossed up into the air and reacted with the ozone layer, which is very, very thin. Like, we're talking atoms thick.
Yeah, it's chlorofluorocarbons. They're very stable down here on atmospheric pressure, but when they go up into the higher atmosphere,
They become reactive.
They become reactive because of the solar bombardment breaks apart the CFC, and that reacts with the ozone layer, and then it reacts and reacts and reacts. And the reason why it's healing is because not all reactions are infinite. And then I can't remember the molecule it reacts to when you're but basically I think it comes in contact with maybe a carbon dioxide or a methane molecule or something like that, and then that stops the reaction. So that's why the ozone layer is able to sort of start healing itself over. And yeah, so and
well, and
you're
remember
right,
that ozone is naturally pretty much only generated during lightning storms.
Yeah.
That's like, if y'all have ever smelled the rain, quote unquote, after a lightning storm, that's ozone.
Yeah. And just J3TZT Bassman is right. Also, it is a propellant for aerosol cans. So, kind
of coming back to that even a little bit, like, about the struggles of sort of science communication generally, when Mindy does sort of take up the mantle of science communication on the other side, he's forced to say a lot of very pithy sounding things, but he can't get into the level of depth that would be required for the average person. Because when he gets into the level of depth, and this is the existential crisis of a science communicator, this is the existential crisis that I had to get into when I was talking about essential oils, and it's the crisis that you and I have gotten into every time I've edited one of your science scripts. Because it's like, how much do I explain?
Yeah, and how do I start not speaking sciencese?
Yeah, like, how much do I need to explain for you to grasp the concept, and how little of that can I explain for the concept to be graspable and transferable? Because remember, if you can't explain a concept to somebody, then you may not have fully grasped it. So how can I explain this in such a way that this is both graspable and, like, explainable without boring the crap out of my audience? Like, for example, when you were talking about the video that you're going to have upcoming on the research that you were doing, we had to get into a sort of discussion about how much you needed to explain the DNA centrifuge extraction technology that was used in, like, extracting the DNA of the microbiota inside of your, like, the feces of your snakes. And for those of you who don't speak sciencese, that is a DNA processing machine, effectively, that separates out DNA and RNA and figures out which of the bacteria from which like familial group are in the fecal matter of snakes.
Well, what it is basically is it just basically destroys the cells using a whole heap of chemical reaction. RNA is destroyed during that time because there's a chemical in it that's RNAs, and I just extract the DNA from the microbiome that was found in the thing. So it's very interesting. It's got really interesting chemistry behind it, but
like, how much of that chemistry do you need to explain? Or do you just need to say, I put the samples into the machine, chemical reactions happen, and then I get data that comes back that tells me what, species or at the very least what genus of these critters are in the snake poo?
Yeah, and how much of it. So I ended up, and the thing is, like we
ended up deciding not to explain most of the technology beyond just sort of mentioning that it was a thing that exists, and that she sent her samples off to have chemical reactions, like, performed on them and got the data back. Because the thing is, again, when you're a STEM major, your instinct, because when you write up lab reports and stuff, your instinct is to want to explain the entire process, because that is typical for research when you're writing it up. But when you're trying to explain your research, it's kind of easy to forget that not everybody knows as much as you do. It's kind of easy to start speaking sciencese and start talking about multi-chain chemical reactions that then, separate out the DNA of the microbiota in snake feces, instead of, talking about, hey, I sent a sample off and found out what critters happened in the snake poo.
Yeah. And when I've done this several times where I've had to put out to Twitter, it's like, or somewhere, it's like, hey, if anyone has the understanding of biology of if you and a rock went up against each other in a biology exam and the rock will beat you, let me know. I need you to read over a script, because I am aware and cognizant of the fact that I have an understanding of science at a much higher level than the average person, because I have a science degree, and not it's not you come across a person with a science degree on the street. And yeah, and anyway, it was just like one of the things is that I've noticed with
versus like when you
with
were writing up
COVID.
your paper. Like, let's compare this though. When you were writing up your paper and you sent me that to help you edit just the grammatical stuff in it, like there were debates between you and other folks about how much detail you needed to include about your process. Like, was I
Yeah,
detailed enough? You wrote pages and pages on the process itself.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, and it's sort of one of the things I've noticed, especially with COVID, is that you've got all these people who have been doing their Facebook degree in immunology, and it's like, well, how much, like, what's an NK cell? What does a lymphocyte do? Like,
What is the
describe to me what
ACE2
a
receptor?
cytokine.
What is the ACE2 receptor, and how does and how do the like coronal structures on the COVID-19 attach to the ACE2 receptor? What kind of damage
Yeah,
can that do?
yeah. What's this? And
What
they have
cells
no
have an
idea.
ACE2 receptor?
Yeah, what's and they don't know, because if it's in when it comes to science, it's always incredibly extremely complicated. And Aikida, it's the rock. So Dwayne Rock Dane says Aikida says an organic rock or an inorganic rock, and I think the rock.
Well, the rock is an organic rock, so I suppose it's
Yeah,
organic either way.
yeah.
So,
So
well, let's get back to like when we were talking to when they were talking to the president, they got bored repeatedly despite the fact that the scientists were trying to give the amount of detail required, and their response was, "Well, are you from MIT? Are you from
yeah,
Stanford?" Even though neither of those places has the best like astronomy department, that would actually be, if I recall correctly, Berkeley, in the
yeah.
US.
She went to
Because like
Michigan State, I think she said.
yes, nevermore, we are still speaking English. We are speaking sciences.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a education snobbery, because she went to Michigan State, and he's like, "Oh, you went to Michigan State?" And he's like, she's like, "Do you want to see my what GED, or what do you guys have? ATAR? I can't remember what you guys have."
It'd be either high school
The
diploma or GD.
Yeah, but like, yeah, do you want to see the marks that I got? Like, because she's a PhD, and she just
Well, she was a doctoral candidate.
all doctorals.
So do you want to see my
Candidate.
master's? Do you want to see my bachelor's? Do you want to see like, because she was a doctoral candidate at Michigan State. So this is like not even, this is like the highest level of education you can get. Like this could have been the thing that got her doctorate.
Yeah. And instead she got killed by the thing that would have got her doctorate if they had fucking listened.
Well, and again, it's back to they got bored because she and he both tried to explain the process by which they arrived at the conclusions, and their response was education snobbery and boredom. And that is consistently what you get. Even if you are an autodidact, with some level of education, and you have even a basic level understanding of science, which you can get to a certain degree. Like, you don't absolutely have to go to school to get an understanding of science. The thing is, though, is if you don't go to school, there are maybe some things that you're missing, or B, even if you do fully understand it, there's some hands-on parts that you don't have access to. It's not like history where you can autodidact your way through history, no problem. Like, you can get your hands on that. It's expensive, but you can get your hands on historical materials. You can learn about historical methodology. There are a lot of lay historians that get very famous for being historians in a very specific area. Science, there are some lay scientists, but it is very rare. And people tend to assume that even the most basic high school level understanding of science is enough to qualify you for research, when in reality, the research methodology, the kind of like stringent requirements that are placed in order to get into the one word name big journals is incredibly high.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to an argument that I had with an anti-vaxxer, because I asked them, okay, so what's your research methodology? What's the impact factor? What is the end value? Like, have you done a statistical analysis? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, that's just the science stuff. I do the natural stuff. And it's like, no, this is not science stuff. This is academia. This is how you find out if the information that you are consuming and you are referencing is accurate. And she's like, no. And it's sort of like, and that's one of the things that that people are doing. Oh, I've done my research, and it turns out that they've done their research using fucking
Google
the
you.
Daily Wire.
They got their degree in bullshit at Google U.
Yeah, exactly.
Carbuckle with a $5 super chat says, wanting to over-explain, I think, happens in every field. As a costume historian, I find myself wanting to explain how a corset really works in detail. Well, yeah, when you are... The thing is this is where you end up with the Dunning-Kruger effect, because everybody forgets the other side of the Dunning-Kruger effect. There's the layperson thinking they know more than they do, but there's also the expert thinking that they know less than they do because they know all the things they don't know. They are educated enough to know how far they are from expertise in the whole of a field.
Yeah. I can tell you this. I know sweet FA about microbes. I majored in microbiology. I know sweet FA about them. Like, I sent you a
I don't know if
message
anybody knows anything about nutrition and dietetics.
But I sent you a message today, and they found a microbe that has a new style of photosynthesis. Like,
well, and don't
which
even
is
get you
cool.
started on like sulfur-based organisms, because that's fucking fascinating. But they all live in ocean vents.
or in like these in soil as well. You can get these, and you make like these columns, and they grow and they go purple. They're pretty. Akita. Aliko, what do you mean? PragerU is not accredited?
I hate to burst your bubble, Akita. Like, I know that breaks your heart. So let's we're kind of in the last 10 or 15 minutes of the show. So let's kind of wrap things up and get into what we're going to be working on next, because I know you are working on redoing the script for a very important video that might be of interest to folks who would like to have a little bit of a better education on, for example, how to select studies if they get into a fight with someone else.
Yeah, so 4.5 million years ago, roughly
back when the dinosaurs walked the earth.
Yeah, back when the dinosaurs, aka 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I can't remember. I did a video on how to choose a good scientific journal. There's a couple of mistakes in there, and of course I didn't know what I was doing. So I'm going to rewrite that. I'm going to make it so I don't actually dox myself, because I actually tell everyone my real name. So I'm going to rewrite that script. It's going to be a lot more amusing as well. I think I'm going to have a lot better jokes in it as well. But I have to try and figure out what's going on with my camera, and see what's going on. So yeah, as I said, if anybody knows a way for me to be able to cool my camera down, yeah, just send me a message on
so
Discord.
Apparently JACandQuill is requesting a video, which by the way, hi JACandQuill, hello channel artist.
Hello.
JACandQuill is currently working on the rebrand for my channel, and I'm really, really excited to see what he comes up with, because I've been seeing previews, and so have patrons, and oh my god, y'all, I can't even wait. Like, it's a completely different art style for the channel, but it's a lot more realistic and a lot less anime and a lot more sort of down to earth. And Jack has also met me in person, so there's a little bit of personal experience as to how I actually look and emote and express. So that's really, really exciting. So, but Jack is actually requesting that you do a video on sulfur-based life.
Well, not sulfur-based, sulfur reducing. Because sulfur-based...
that you can bring this up in the video.
Yeah, sulfur-based life can't exist on this planet unless you probably... I think they've hypothesized you might be able to get some microbes that are sulfur-based, like on the lowest part of the crust. And
We
yeah,
can get into that later.
well, actually, I'll very quickly explain why, because it's really cool. So, the reason why carbon is such a whore when it comes to binding with everything is because it has 4 valence electrons, but it's small, so it can sort of like double
For
bond
those of
with
you
things.
for those of you who forgot that in
And
chemistry class, those are the electrons that are on the outside of the atom that can go fuck off to somewhere else or attract others to them, as it were.
yeah, so
So based on
but
how many of
it's
those you have, you either need to bring more in because, in order to get to 8, which is stable, or you need to kick them, or they need to like fuck off. And 4 means you can either bring 4 in or fuck off 4 of them. So carbon is particularly reactive because of that, and because of the fact that it is small, so it doesn't have a very strong hold on its electrons.
No, it's got a fairly strong hold because it's small, because the electrons are closer to the nucleus that have a positive charge.
Mm-hmm.
But with sulfur is directly underneath in the periodic table. It's directly underneath carbon, so it has 4 valence electrons, but it's fat, so it can't double bond.
Mm-hmm.
But with high pressure, it kind of the electron cloud kind of gets squashed in, so it potentially could double bond with things. So as far as we know on this planet, we shouldn't be able to find sulfur based, like where sulfur takes up the mantle of carbon's role.
Yeah, when I
except
said
for
sulfur-based
maybe on the
life, I
crust.
meant sulfur-reducing life.
Yeah, sulfur reducing, yeah.
It's
Which
just so
is
frequently called, quote, sulfur-based life that it's
yeah.
like that's the common term that people will probably know.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's the difference. But it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Which is why you can have like different types, like carbon can be the like diamond or graphite or graphene. But really you only can get one type of sulfur because it can't double bond. Anyway,
Fun fact, the
it's
majority of digestion is breaking apart carbon bonds so that you can break things like carbohydrates, proteins, etc. into smaller and smaller components so your body can actually use them to synthesize its own molecules. So when you're talking about like bonds and such in carbon, like that sounds really boring until you realize that that's kind of the process by which you are currently breathing.
Yeah, it's very carbon's a very like, and there's an entire branch of chemistry that's based around carbon, which is organic chemistry.
AKA nomenclature, the class.
Pretty much. And Sudoku, the class. And Sudoku.
Sudoku?
Yeah, it's if you want to do basically it's if you want to be able to create molecules, you need to know what reaction does what by pushing around electrons and making and breaking bonds and stuff like that. And it's literally a what's it called? Like it's a logic puzzle, and it was really fun. I actually really enjoyed organic chem.
I'd rather forget that I ever took it.
You had a bad organic chemistry teacher. I had a really good one.
So coming back to, I was about to talk about my video before we ended up on the tangent. So this week, we are going to be talking on my channel about the Greek soul, because patrons actually voted for this actually 2 weeks ago when the video originally dropped for them. I asked them, so the problem is that literally half of the topics that currently exist on the last topic list that I released are inaccessible unless I do this video on the soul. And the other option is snakes and the divine. What do you guys want? Literally over double wanted the soul. So I've been working every day for the past week and a half, almost 2 weeks, to try to get this done, because I had to go through over 900 pages between the various monographs that I read and the actual direct, like, primary sources in order to pull as much information as possible. I'm going to be covering the souls of Homer, because he actually considered you to have many, between 5 and 9, depending on what you count as being a soul organ. Plato, who believed that the soul was unified but tripartite, and Aristotle, who agreed with Plato that the soul had to be unified and tripartite, but disagreed on what those parts were. So if you guys are interested in that, that's going to be coming out on Thursday. I am working my whole ass off on trying to get as much as I possibly can to make this as accessible as possible. The Homer section has the Greek words sort of next to their translations. I've been highlighting the parts of the quotes that I'm talking about in the video in red. There's a lot of like activity going on the screen for this one. I was working right up until the stream started, just about. I almost forgot to send Mero the link. She had to bother me on WhatsApp to get my attention, but I worked from about 12:30 to a little past 5:40 today on it, and barely got 14 minutes into the editing. So this is a doozy of a video. It's been a doozy to research. I've been like absolutely just whinging about it in my patron chat, but I'm really, really proud of it because it opens up the ability to start talking about things like madness, to start talking about propitiation, and some of these other sort of deeper topics within the Hellenic worldview, which are very, very important to understand, not to believe in them, but to understand when you see certain weird stuff that happens in, say, myths or comedies or tragedies, what's going on there, to understand things a little closer to the way that they would have, so you can extract what's useful and not get distracted in the weeds of just typical Greek thought on certain topics. So for those of you who are interested, that's what I'm doing this week. We're talking about the Greek soul.
And you absolutely love your patrons for choosing that particular topic as well. As like,
I mean, I love them because they made me stop putting it off, because I've been gathering materials for it since my freaking channel started. Also, fun fact, Elise, I didn't actually know that Ocean was doing a soul video. I had no idea. He put his out last week, and I had already planned on mine. Like, patrons had already voted on that the week before. So I had no freaking clue that he was doing that. So anyhow,
alrighty.
With that out of the way, thank you guys all so much for hanging out with us. As I say at the end of every one of my videos, we're stronger together. And as we say together, allyship is healing. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.